Hello, welcome everyone to the Service Management User Group. Today we are going, next slide. Image it. So we have a user group today. We're going to do a release deep dive today. Next slide, let's look at the agenda. So first we're going to cover a quick update on the latest patches for SMAX and AMX. And then we're going to go into a release deep dive from our 24.4 release. Simajit Das is going to cover the changes that we've done to Integration Studio as part of the last release. Then if we have time at the end, we'll cover what's coming up for the Service Management User Group, including Aviator Enablement Week, and any questions. So please, if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and use the Q&A section of the Teams webinar, and we'll try to monitor those and answer them as we go along. Next slide. For Indusa, we can cover the patches.
So for the patches, let's talk about the last two branches, right? So for 24.2 branch, which covers both 24.2 and 24.3, the latest patch is 24.3.2. That got released not that long ago, has a number of fixes for SMAX, UCMDB, and OMP. Don't forget to check out the other components and patch them. And just a reminder, this only is relevant for standalone customers, as the SaaS OpenText SaaS customers have already moved to the next version. And then on the 24.4 branch, we just released patch 2 not that long ago with a number of fixes. And for the SaaS customers, we are in the process of updating the farms. The notifications have been sent out, so keep an eye on the notifications you received, or check the health page for the schedule relevant to your particular farm. And with that, hand back over to Sumajit and Steve.
Thank you, Brindusa. I'll go through the next section, which is the Integration Studio. We have released quite a few important items in 24.4 release and subsequently in the patches. And I'm going to walk you through all of those features, and then we'll pick up one of the important features, which is the Gmail integration, and then we'll do a deep dive in that. This is a popular slide that you have seen. We have as a very low code, no code integration studio, which considerably reduces the time to do integration with OpenText Service Management and another third-party application. There are different components in this particular Integration Studio. You might be already aware. Maybe we can take a quick poll. How many of you have used Integration Studio? Raise your hand if when you go to the Teams and the React, you can see. Okay.
2 people have raised their hands so far. 3 people.
Okay, good. So we have some people who have used Integration Studio. So when you do an integration, you set up the endpoint. Endpoint is your target system from OTSM, OpenText Service Management. We used to call it SMAX. With OpenText, we are calling it as OpenText Service Management. So you create an endpoint to the target system to which you want to integrate. And then out of the box, we produce a lot of connectors. So either you use an out-of-the-box connector that is already available. For example, we are going to do the Gmail integration, and we have created an out-of-the-box connector. A connector is basically all of the metadata of the API that is pre-loaded in the system that gets you to execute all the actions that are there in a particular API for the target system, right? So on over the rest, you can, if an application has actions like get record or create record, right? So we embed those actions, and the connector will help you to directly invoke those actions, and then use those connectors, and you can create an integration, and you can create a scenario which is basically an end-to-end use case that you would want to execute. I'll go through the entire process, the details in my demo. One thing I wanted to highlight is a connector, right? You can have multiple connectors, as you see over here. These are the out-of-the-box connectors that we have got already. These are the most popular ones. But then if you do not find a connector, right, that you want to integrate with a target system, you don't see it. For example, Google Workspace, right? We have Google Email now as an out-of-the-box connector, but if you want to integrate with Google Workspace, you don't see the connector. No problem. In such cases, we have the very powerful generic connector, which is nothing but as equivalent to as any REST API client, right, that you can work with. So a Postman, as an example, right, you try to do all of your transactions over the REST API, and you use the Postman to send or receive data. And our generic connector is as good or even better than our Postman, because it kind of guides you through, and you can use the generic connector to do all of the integrations. You don't need it to be out of the box. The reason why we put things out of the box, or these connectors out of the box, are the ones which are mostly used. But if you do not have one, that is not a stopper for you. You can continue. If it is a REST API, you can always use the generic connector, or the generic REST API connector rather, and do a get, post, put, patch, delete, whatever action you would want to execute. Now, if a target application does not support REST, then you have other options. You can use ConnectIT, or you can use operations orchestration. And then if it is operation orchestration, you can again invoke an operation orchestration from Integration Studio itself and integrate with an external application. There are various modes that you see on the right hand side that you can do an integration. You can do an active to an external system. You can do an active passive. You can keep SMAX passive and the external system active, which is basically the external system pushing data into SMAX. Or you can have active and semi-active, where SMAX has a listener and you have a webhook, and you actively push data on the particular on change of record, and then the external system responds when it has to respond, and it does it through the webhook. So these are the various modes of integration. Now, this is very generic discussion about Integration Studio. Just wanted to recap. Now, coming down to what we released in 24.4, we released a lot of improvements with respect to the engine itself. You can have a new common action called sleep, where you need to pause that scenario and then execute it again. We have done execution improvement in the JSON viewer, as you can see in the screenshot, and I will also show live that we have a better JSON viewer, so you can look at the payloads as you do the integration. When we say low code, no code, one thing you need to understand that we require the basic knowledge about the REST API, but we do not need a scripting experience, right? You could do it very easily through the Integration Studio. But having said that, you still require the REST API knowledge, right? That's a prerequisite. So here is a JSON viewer, and here you can see it in a more formatted way. And in the execution history, we now allow deletes. I'll also show that when I'm doing the demo. We have created a new default role, which is an integration administrator that would so you would not need a tenant admin to do the integrations. We have made DSL improvements. We have added a few additional DSLs like current integration. You can find out the integration ID, UPN, and so on. Current scenario. So if there is something that you would want to do from the current scenario, you can pick up the listener URL from the current scenario programmatically. Get scenario listener URL. That's yet another that I was emphasizing on. This is something that you would require while you do various integration setup. We also added a connector that helps with XECM integration. That's the open text information management. XECM is one of the popular product. With this, we will be able to integrated way show all of the documents that are in XECM. We have done core content earlier this year, so we released the XECM embedded XECM, which allows the on a contract record, it allows you to show the contracts that are stored in XECM. So it gives a very integrated view of the whole of the information management along with the ITSM, or if it is HR or if it is CSM, it all brings together in one single platform. On the content, we added UCMDB connector bulk API updates. So now you can also use Integration Studio to create or update a CI in bulk in UCMDB. One of the use case could be that you have an Intune integration, you bring in the Intune data in using the SMAX Integration Studio, and you can always also in the same scenario create those CIs directly in UCMDB. We also released the Gmail inbound connector. This is something that I'm going to double click on in a few minutes in my demo. And this Gmail inbound connector helps do an inbound integration from Gmail into creating a record in SMAX. This has been there before. You could have used Connect IT, but then Gmail came up with the announcement that they are going to obsolete the normal authentication. So this particular inbound email will allow OAuth to authentication, which is more secure, and it's going to be the latest one. So the direction that we want to take is to use the integration, inbound email integration through the Integration Studio. We have released the inbound email integration with Microsoft Office 365, and with 24.4, we added the comprehensive template out of the box. We do not have a comprehensive template for Gmail, but that's why I'm doing this deep dive right now. In future, we would want to add a email template as well for inbound connection to create a service request or an incident for Gmail as well. But you have end-to-end now for Microsoft Office 365, so you can do your inbound email integration from Office 365 to OTSM using the inbound Office 365 email connector and template. We also enhanced, added service manager to service management to service management case exchange templates with inline images. So that's we enhanced the scenario. Okay. The main subject for today, I'll take a pause. Is there any question so far?
Nothing's been posted yet.
Okay. All right. So I would like to double click on Gmail integration. Basically, For an organization which standardizes on Gmail, the idea is you can have a service account, and then if there is any issue that an employee or a user wants to report, say, for example, they are not able to log in into an application, then they can, send an email to a common account, and then that is pre-integrated with OTSM, and the email gets processed and a ticket gets created, and the user gets a confirmation that the ticket is created. So this is yet another mode of communication. You can, do a phone call, you can do a self-service, you can chat with the Aviator bot, or now you can also do an email exchange to create an incident or a service request in SMAX. The flow is that you send an email, integration scenario listener picks up that record, creates a request, and then you receive a notification. All right, so I'm going to switch over to the demo for this, and I might be logged out, but we'll see. So this is an email. This is an employee email, which is on Gmail, and OTSM.integrations is a common service account. I'm unable to log in, and I get the below error message. Please help, and I send this email. Okay, the mail is sent. Let me look up this over here. It takes a while. So in the there you go. So this email has come. Now I'm going to show you that I have got an inbound email endpoint pre-created for this. I'm going to recreate it for you right now over the meeting, but I'll just show you what I'm going to do right now. So there is a scenario. This is a process email scenario, and this could be scheduled, but right now for the sake of demo, I'm going to run the scenario. And this scenario is supposed to pick up any email that has come into the inbox and create a service request. So let's look at the execution history over here. Right now it's about 9:49 p.m. and I see it is finished. As you can see that one of the important items that we released is now you can delete. I don't want you to see that something has failed, so I deleted it right now. Yep, that's a new feature. It kind of helps you keep it clean and then remove the stuffs that are very old. So the scenario have got executed. If I go back here and refresh, it has taken the email back into processed. If there is an error, it will go to the error. And let us see what has happened over here. There was one that I tested before so that everything is working. And now this is a new email that got created that I just sent, right? So now agent is able to see that there is an issue, and then you can do all other automation that you can auto assign, and then there could be suggestions from Aviator bot coming back and so on and so forth. There will be email that has sent as well. I've received an email as well in my inbox that has come here, and the flow end to end is complete. Now this email integration, I kind of demonstrated the working of it. Let's deep dive how we configure it, right? So there we've got this documentation over here as how you configure Gmail. And there are certain configurations on the Gmail side that we expect a Gmail administrator or a company administrator to follow. But then we also have the guide as what all you need to do in OTSM to get all of these configured, right? So the first thing first is to have an account created, which is basically the OTSM.integration, something that I created, very straightforward. What I should do next to get this configured, right? So first thing is I need to go to Google Cloud, right? It's straightforward, cloud.google.com, right? And then you go to console, okay? And then REST API and services. And now here, the first thing is you see that there is a project here as Gmail integration. This project is something that I created for this demo. So when you are configuring, you're going to first go and create a new project, right? Gmail integration demo. Okay. The next thing that I need to do is to enable Gmail API. So I go to enable. Okay, let me do this slow again. So I created the new project, which is Gmail integration demo. So I go back to this project now. I point to this project. And the first thing that I'm going to do is enable the Gmail API. All right. So I go to enable APIs. There are a bunch of API. Search for Gmail. Gmail API. Go here. Enable it. That's the first step. Okay. It's processing. Okay. Gmail API is enabled now. Next thing that you are going to do is to set up the credentials. And the first one that we need to do is to set up an API key. Okay, this is something that you would require later. I'll show you. Right? So the API key is created. You can give a better name over here. The next thing that I'm going to do is to create an OAuth client ID, which will actually handshake the authentication. Now, when you try to do this as a first step, you kind of have to configure the consent screen. These are all Google email steps that you need to follow. You can keep it internal. I'm keeping it external so that I can do from multiple domains. And then I'm going to put Gmail. It's an application. Add domain. This is because over here, it's our SaaS is on microfocus.com. And okay, so what I did over here is I put my login over here, but basically you can use the integration user in this case and the service account that you have set up, right? Okay, there is one support email, which is the current email, and I click on save. Next is I need to define the scope, and in the scope, I will have to put Gmail API. Okay, the first one is good enough. That covers almost all of it. Update the scope. Now you can have more defined scope created, right? Add test users. And this is my login to SaaS. So I add these two. Save and continue. And then finally, my consent screen is ready. Now I go back to the credentials, and now I have to add OAuth client ID. Application type is web application. OTSM inbound email. And now at this point in time, let's create the endpoint. And I'll tell you why I insist on that. So I go back over here. Integrations. And go to integrations. Okay. Come on. It's not where I intended. Okay. Here. Let's go to the endpoint. Okay. And I'm going to create one more, right? Just to give the demonstration for this. So select REST executor 2.0, Gmail inbound email demo, configure, put OAuth 2, because that's what we're going to use. And then here is the callback URL. This callback URL is what you would require to configure here. I'm back into my Google Cloud, and you have to add an authorized redirect URL, which is this one. And now this is ready. Okay, so my client ID and my client secret got created, generated. I'm going to copy these and then go back to the endpoint setup, and I'm going to put the client ID and client secret that I copy from here. Okay. Then I need to enter a few additional details that I'm going to walk you through. So if I go back to the documentation that we have got this table, and there are certain values that you have to put out of the box. We have provided them. So base URL would be Google API. So we have already mentioned these values in here. Authorization URL is going to be, scroll down there. I don't need this for now. Authorization URL, okay? And then I have the token URL, which is this one. And finally, I have to put the scope. Now, this scope is something that you are going to put more refined way in your project. And then I save this. I go back and get token. This is where I'm going to get authenticated, continue, saying that this has to give the access. And once I give the access, I save this back. You see that I've set up the connection. Okay. So once I have set up the connection, all I need to do is to go back and configure my scenario, which in this case I demoed to you already. The scenario is already available. All I'm going to do is to go and point to the new one, right? And that's it. My scenario is configured. And then I go back to the, save this, and then I go back to the scenario. Now, here is a scenario that I have already created. I thought it was going to be quite elaborate if I'm going to create it on screen, but I can actually explain the steps that has been done. So we were talking about the generic connector and the Gmail connector, right? So basically with the Gmail connector, you have all of the actions predefined here. However, if I look at Slack, this Slack integration is built on the generic connector, right? And if I look at the scenario over here, send Slack message. If I look at this, basically I am putting the URI as chat.post message. This is an action that action could be defined in multiple ways, but this is where Slack does the action. So I just put it in the URI, and I'm able to execute the payload that I need to send to get a Slack or post a message in Slack. So now this is using a generic connector. For Gmail, we intend that we expect Gmail will be more widely used. So you see that this connector out of the box exposes these actions, and all you need to do is to one step further to just use the action. So what we have done in this scenario is, first, we have configured all the items that we require to initialize the scenario. For example, the service account is mentioned here. Remember, I had set up the API key over here. So this is the API key, right? This key is what you're going to put it in here, right? And then we fetch from the inbox. When I send a mail here, this is the inbox, right? So we fetch it from the inbox. And when an email is processed, we put it back into the processed. So this is a design that you have to do before you even set up this integration. So this is a design in mind that I will move all the emails to processed, and then whatever comes to the inbox will be moved into, would be created. You will create a record for it, right? That way you do not duplicate anything up. And if there is an error, I do a proper error handling, right? So all of the stuff that are kind of the initialization for this is done at the beginning. Then I fetch all the labels that are available. So these are all the get and the post and the response that I get. I parse those response and I get all the labels. Then I read through all the messages. This is the list of message. So in my inbox, if there are 5 messages, then all of what this will do is do an iteration to get all the messages, get the inline attachment, get the image attachment inline, get the MIME content. Please note that Gmail does a base 64 encryption, so we will also have to handle that, right? So we get the MIME content, upload the attachment, and then what we do is we prepare the SMAX data. So this is exactly where we kind of call this, the local connector and put the data in SMAX. And here you can choose to create an incident or a request or some of your custom application that you would want to, but this is again based on your use case. You prepare the data over here, and then we actually do a post to create. And this is a new API that we have created, which is impersonate API to create a request. So now I'm creating a request as a user. And the next one is if there is a modification that I need to do to the existing message, is what I have put over here. And then that's pretty much the scenario that has been done for this Gmail processing. And one more thing that I want to show over here is, here is an execution history. The execution history now is very, very well. This is exactly what I was talking about as what we have done as an improvement, that you can see the JSON in a well-structured format. Anything that you want to do. So if there is an error, you can very easily see all of the data as you are working through this. And if you look at the execution history, each of the steps that you have created have got executed. So it is very easy for you to debug if there is some error somewhere during the steps. All right. So that's pretty much that I wanted to demo on Gmail setup. because this is something that is tricky because you need to know how you do the Gmail setup, account setup at the Google Cloud end. I've got quite a few requests asking about this, and that's where I thought that this is going to be useful for the community. So I'll stop here. If there is any question, we can take the question. Otherwise, Steve, that's pretty much I had for the demo.
So there are a few
Great.
questions, Majid. Yes, and I think we'll park the roadmap questions because the sessions are usually about the the
Current
existing
capabilities.
functionality. Yes. So one question is from Andre is about if the scenario replaces the email endpoint integration, so the one through on-premise bridge.
Yes, so you would not require an on-premise bridge if you are using the Integration Studio and Gmail inbound integration. This is one of the requirement in one of the customer that it's purely SaaS. On-premise bridge is something that they would want to avoid. So here it is. The solution would be use the inbound Gmail integration through the Integration Studio.
Obviously, if you're not using Gmail, then it's
if you're not using Gmail and
yeah,
if you're using Office
right.
365, that's also can be done because we have got the inbound Office 365 as well.
Yep. Okay. Good. And then we have another question from Danny. If the SMAX enables data domain segmentation, do we need to create two integration studio? One is for IT and the other one for HR with two distinct Gmail addresses.
Absolutely. I just showed you that you can have two different projects, two different accounts in your Gmail service account.
But the question is, do we have to? I don't think we do.
No, you don't need to unless, I mean, it is your design, right?
You can, and probably from a best practice, because they're so different, you may want to have different emails, but it's not mandatory.
Yeah, and the beauty is that you do not need to have multiple Gmail account. One Gmail account, different projects for different departments, they are all segregated, and each of the project point to individual endpoint connectors and your scenario, and then you guide everything through the domains. Right. So you have all of the business rule that guides your domain. So at the step where you saw that I created the record, that is where you're also going to set the domain so that it gets, routed to the right domain. Make sense?
Yep. Okay, and we got one more question. What is Impersonate API and how it is different from EMS API?
Okay, so by the name, right, it kind of impersonates the person who is creating this particular request. It's a new API that would help do all of the RBAC stuff. RLAC, right? RLAC.
RLAC.
That's what we call it. Yeah,
RLAC, yeah.
Not RBAC, sorry.
Yeah.
I meant RLAC.
Okay. I don't see other questions. I think we can move to the wrap-up slides.
Okay.
All right. Last slide, just covering the schedule for the user group coming up. So just a reminder that we are doing these monthly now on the second Wednesday of each month. So the current one is for December. Next one will be January 8th. And for that one, we'll be doing the release readiness webinar for the 25.1 release. And then in February, we'll get hands-on with Aviator Enablement Week. And then for March, we're still working out what our topic is going to be for that week. So if you would like to present something, you can always reach out to me, Steve Anderson, or to Dean. Or if you have suggestions, you can let us know as well.
Yeah, and I
Anything
have one
else,
thing to
Majid
add.
or Brindusa?
Yeah, I want to add one thing. Come March, that would be the time when we would be gearing up for 25.2 major release. And every time before the major release, we run the release hackathon, which basically is an early access to the customers and partners to look at the new release items or do installation upgrade for the new versions. So that would be sometime around March. We'll send out the communication, but just also wanted to mention in the user group. If you have not been part of the previous hackathon, please reach out to me, Somajit Das, and I will include you in my invite list. That's all.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend today. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Samajit, for the great presentation.
Thank you. No problem.
Bye.